Hello, I'm Callum Finley and welcome to Chatterbox. I'm an actor, writer, as well as an associate artist and alumnus of Playbox Theatre. So, here we are in isolation for at least another 3 weeks, which means no more rehearsal rooms, no more workshops, and no more performances. Now, not being able to watch or create work at the moment is rubbish, but Chatterbox is here to help. Throughout the series, I'll be inviting fellow actors, artists, and creatives to come and chat to me and to chat to all of you about careers, aspirations, reflections, and inevitably how we're all responding to the current situation. Now, we want you to get involved in these conversations as well. So you are able to ask questions to our guest via Zoom's Q&A function. If you hover your mouse at the bottom of your screen, if you're on a laptop, or the top of your screen, if you're on a mobile, then you'll find a button you can click to send questions directly into my inbox. And you should also be able to see the questions that other people have pitched and vote for the ones you'd like to hear answered. The more votes, the higher they appear in my inbox. And as if that weren't enough, you can also comment on questions as well, if there's a little detail you'd like to add to someone else's question. I'll be keeping an eye on them as we go, but I promise that we'll try and get through as many as we can at the end. Now, if you're watching live on YouTube, don't worry. Though you can't message in questions, you can still get involved by helping to support Playbox during this period of insecurity. Playbox Theatre is, in my opinion, an incredible resource for young people who have an interest in the arts. Whether you want to act, work backstage, make films, or join the circus, Playbox has a workshop that can help you explore those ambitions. And they need your support to make it through these choppy times. So head over to playboxtheatre.com/donate and give whatever you can afford to. Every single penny will genuinely make a huge difference to the future of this incredible company and will help make sure that when all this madness is over, they'll still be able to open their doors to young people. Now, as you may have noticed from that trendy trailer we showed at the start, today I have invited Juliet Stevenson to be my Chatterbox guest. Now, Juliet Stevenson needs no introduction, but I'll do it anyway. A RADA graduate, she began her career in the 1980s with the Royal Shakespeare Company, where she's performed in 13 productions, and where she's been directed by Peter Brook, Trevor Nunn, Adrian Noble, Katie Mitchell, amongst many, many others. She became a household name in 1991, playing Nina opposite Alan Rickman in the film Truly, Madly, Deeply, a performance that won her the Evening Standard Film Award for Best Actress. She's performed with the Royal Shakespeare Company, the National Theatre, the Royal Court, the Young Vic, the Hampstead, the Almeida, and in the West End. And in fact, tomorrow was due to be the first performance of the West End transfer of the play that we saw the trailer for earlier, The Doctor, for which she won the Critics' Circle Award for Best Actress. She's been nominated for 8 Olivier Awards, 4 BAFTAs, and an Emmy. She was awarded a CBE in 1999. And I'm not kidding, that's just a handful of the incredible things that she's done. So, Juliet, thank you for joining our inaugural Chatterbox session. How are you holding up in isolation? You're hidden away in Suffolk countryside, I believe.
Yes, I am. Hello, everybody. This is very exciting. This is my Zoom debut, which, and you know, at my age, you don't really expect to have any debuts left, really. So I'm very excited to have this one. Yeah, I'm in Suffolk because my husband has some health issues, which mean that he absolutely must be kept safe from, well, as everybody must, but particularly those with certain health issues. So we are in Suffolk, which is really, really lucky. So it's a wild, windy, sunny day here, and we do have access to the outside. So I feel really privileged about that.
Oh, lovely. Now, tomorrow is going to be your first preview for The Doctor in the West End.
Yes, it was.
Feeling not doing it?
Well, very sad, you know, really, really sad. We had a run at the Almeida last year, and then it was going into the West End, having gone on a short tour to Brighton and Richmond, which would have been the last 2 weeks. We did make it to the Adelaide Festival in Australia with the show, with half the company new. It's a fantastic company of actors, and I really love them. So I miss them. We did 2.5 weeks in Australia, came back poised to go here, and then, like everybody else, we hit this brick wall. So yeah, I'm very mindful of the day today, because I guess we would have been dress rehearsing, and as you say, first preview tomorrow night. So I'm a bit, I'm a bit sore about that. But, listen, I mean, I just feel at the moment, there are two realities, aren't there? One of which is, we've all got the things that we're disappointed about. All those weddings that were going to take place, all those events in people's lives that were planned. So everybody has their personal disappointment. And then there's the general picture. And I try always to focus on the general picture. And, we are so lucky to have a home, to have an outside space. So I keep saying that to myself. But professionally, I am sad about it. And I think what's worrying is that it's very uncertain as to how the West End is going to kick back in. Will people, whenever lockdown finishes, and as you say, it's probably going to be at least another month, but even if it's September, who is really going to want to go into a crowded auditorium? Are people going to take a long time to go back in to theatres and cinemas? And if so, what does that mean for the West End? How damaged is it going to be? So I think there's lots of insecurity around for all of us.
Well, I hope that people do get to go and see it, because, I mean, I saw it at the Almeida and I loved it. I mean, your character, Dr. Ruth Wolfe, or Big Bad, I think, as she was called by her colleagues. I love that she saw everything kind of crystal clearly, as she said a lot. But what was so brilliant about the production was that actually none of the show was sort of crystal clear in the way it tackled race, gender, politics. I mean, even right down to the interval. I remember sitting in the audience and everyone being scared to get up and go to the loo because they weren't sure if it was the interval or not.
I know. Yeah, class, because I don't leave the stage, because I wander around all through the interval. Yes.
I wondered if that's what audiences loved about it, maybe that they were sort of forced to think and engage in those discussions.
I really, really think that's right. I think it's one of those plays, and they come along, if you're really lucky in your working lifetime of decades, these shows come along about maybe once every 20 years or something, where you really feel you're in a play that so speaks to the times that we're living in that everybody wants to see it. And you feel you're feeding a hunger. And, we've all been in work which people wanted to see and enjoyed watching, but it's a different feeling when you're in something and you really feel there's this hunger in the audience for the issues that it's exploring. And I think the Doctor does really do that. I think, if we can think back to pre-COVID-19 time, we have been riddled with issues of identity. And this country's been, chronically divided and split over Brexit, so the Remain and Leave identities, but all sorts of identity politics springing up, and people seeking to define themselves in ever smaller groups. You're not just a feminist. What kind of feminist are you? There's 16 different categories of feminist, or 16 different categories of, sexual identity. And that's, in many ways, that's really great. In some ways, that's all good, but it has made us very divided, and sometimes it's narrowed our fields of understanding or discussion right down into very tight parochial places. And I think that's what the play has been looking at, and also the whole, the tyranny of the online, the social media culture, where people are judged so quickly. You like something, you don't like something, you hate somebody, you love somebody. It's all so fast and so judgmental without any understanding of the circumstances in which things have happened or taken place. So those two big issues of our time were partly what the play is exploring.
You said to me once that you thought theatre could change the world. Did you think that's what the Doctor was trying to do? Was it?
Well, I definitely thought that when I started. When I left drama school and I went in and I was 20 years old, that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I thought theatre could do. I get it was a very different era. I'm not sure it can change the world. No, it can't do that. But it can definitely shift perception. And if I failed to believe in that, still, I wouldn't go on doing it. I mean, I think I only go on doing it because I do think it's one of few remaining forums where people can walk in, sit down, suspend judgment, even suspend their own identity, immerse in somebody else's story. Think about and feel what it is to be somebody else or another group of people. Feel what it is to be different, all sorts of different people over the course of 2 or 3 hours, and then emerge back and sort of segue back into their own lives. But they have, whether they've chosen to or not, they have experienced someone else's reality, and that itself is political. Because it means that means that we seek to connect with other lives. We seek to understand why we are who we are in all our huge diversity, and that's got to improve things like tolerance and understanding. And so the imagination is the most powerful political tool we have, because imagination, whether it's looking at a picture or a play or whatever it is our capacity to imagine another way of being and another way of living and another reality. And that's the absolute key to any sort of political action or change, I think. We have to be able to dream of another way of being, whether that's individually or socially as a society. Yeah.
Do you think that's why we still enjoy doing, 500-year-old plays as well? Because I think one of the best things about Rob's work, Rob Icke, who directs The Doctor, is that he treats plays with a great deal of respect, but also without any sort of reverence or awe or deference to the kind of history of them.
Yeah.
And sort of having been in a rehearsal room with you, I would say the same about your approach. So I guess, do you think it's important that we treat old plays as if they're new ones?
Absolutely, totally. That is my sort of mantra, and certainly Rob's, and that's why one of the reasons I love the way he works on classic plays. I adore the classics, just like him. But even when I was 20, I went to the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I was right on the bottom rung, and just shut up and do what you're told, sort of contract. But even then, I remember thinking, why are we doing all these plays constantly? The same plays coming round in the canon. In this company, why are we doing that if we're not each time saying, well, what's this play got to do with how we are living now, or what we need to understand now? What's the point of doing any of them if it's not speaking to the times we're living in? So that's why I personally have never had any interest in, how Shakespeare was done in his time, or ending the play with a jig, or or all that stuff is absolutely, fine if that's your thing. I totally understand and respect it, but it's absolutely not my bag. My bag is, theatre's about now. Theatre's a live event. It's about the group of people in your room, that you're in the room with tonight. So how does this classic play resonate now? And if it doesn't, let's not bother with it. And if it does, great. But how does it? And how does it resonate now as opposed to last year or last decade? Or, and Rob is so alive. Rob Icke, who, as you say, he rewrites everything. So even Hamlet, that you were in, we were in together, he shifted scenes around and he shaped it and filleted it, edited it, just to make it a trimmer, leaner machine for our time. And I think that's absolutely fine. I think that's great.
Just to rewind a little. So, as a teenager, you gave up a place at Bristol University. Is that right? To go and be an actor at RADA.
Yes.
Now, there'll be loads of teenagers in the webinar here watching this discussion. I imagine that was a huge decision you made at 18. I guess, was it a difficult one? Would you make the same decision now?
So it was just that I came from a family that had nothing to do with theatre. So when I thought I wanted so all through school, really well-meaning parents and teachers were saying, well, obviously, you're going to go to university because you're quite, you're okay at school. And so you'll go to university, and then, what are you interested in? Oh, you're interested in theatre and drama. Okay, so read drama. Or why don't you read drama and English as a joint honours, and then you can do your literature, your academic stuff, and then you can do the drama, because I know you like that sort of thing. And so I did. So I found that Bristol University had this great joint English and drama honours course, which I think was one of the few universities back then that did. And I really wanted to get on that course. So I did, and I was really chuffed when that place came through. But then I had one of those, then I took a year off after school. I was a bit young in my year, it just worked out that way. So I took a gap year after school. And I had one of those, extraordinary moments where I just woke up one morning and thought, light bulb came on. What the hell am I doing reading drama as an academic subject at university? I have never wanted to teach it. I totally respect drama teachers massively, but it's not my thing. I either want to act or do something completely different, but I don't want. And then I looked back at the trail behind me of well-meaning teachers and parents and friends, and I saw that everybody gently said, yeah, well, okay, be interested in that, but do the wise and sensible and cautious thing, which is to study it at university and then maybe teach it or write about it. But the idea of jumping in anything so sort of crazily insecure as being an actor. And also, to be fair, I didn't know any actors. I could have said I want to be an astronaut, when we don't have a space program in this country. It was that unlikely, really. So it was well-meaning people who sort of pushed me in that direction. But when I had that light bulb moment, I thought, I don't want to do this. I want to act. This is not the way to become an actor. So I'm going to write to a drama school. I hadn't heard of any drama schools except RADA. So I wrote to them and said, how do you get in? And they said, well, you audition and this is what you have to do. So I did that. And I had absolutely no faith at all. I didn't think for a second I'd get in. I thought, well, I'll just give this a try and then I'll go to Bristol. So when that place from RADA did come through, I think I had been confused about what was the right course. But when that place from RADA came through and I opened that letter that morning, I didn't spend a second deciding. I knew exactly what I was going to do, which was to chuck in the university place. And then suddenly everything that my life suddenly went from being sort of blurred focus, like a camera, to being sharp focus, because it was just clear to me that's what I wanted to do. But I sort of needed the outside world to say, okay, well, you can.
And this is a question we've had in from Sarah Little. From the perspective of a parent, if you have a child who wishes to pursue a career in performance, what advice would you give them to help avoid the pitfalls and deal with, what is going to be unsuccessful castings at times? What's your advice on that front?
I don't know whether Sarah's child, daughter or son, is already on that track, is already a drama student, or I don't know. But I think to any parent of a child who's interested in doing that, but hasn't yet started to train, maybe is still at school. I mean, I've been such a parent. We've got 4 kids, and at least one of them was very interested in having a career in the theatre. And I'd say, I mean, absolutely, if that's the only thing they can bear thinking of doing. If you're ambivalent, if your child is trying to decide between possibly doing theatre and possibly doing something else, I'd say, well, if you can live without it and do something else, do the something else. It's got to be an absolute passion. And I know that sounds a little corny, but it is true. It's true because you're going to need it. You're going to need that passion. You're going to need that rigorous determination because, as we all know, there are so many knocks on the way. There is so much rejection. You get treated so badly so much of the time, so discourteously. You're so broke half the time. There's so many disappointments. You've got to be really, really determined. And so if you're in any way ambivalent, I think don't do it. But if your child says, that's what I want to do, and my heart is set on that and only that, then I say, absolutely, well, support them. I didn't have any actual sort of opposition from my own parents. I think because I was a girl, they didn't think my career was that important, to be honest. It was as a weird way of benefiting from sexism. If I'd been a boy, it might have been hard. If I'd been a boy, it was no, absolutely not. You've got to go to university and have a proper career, But I think they, because I was a girl, they just said, oh, well, okay, do that if you want to. So I didn't have resistance, which I'm very grateful for. And I wouldn't resist any of my kids in anything they wanted to do, really, if they were really, really convinced and passionate about it.
So you and I are at other ends of the spectrum here in terms of our careers, but I often feel a huge amount of uncertainty and doubt about my choice of career. I wondered if that's something you've ever faced as well. As you say, it's a career in which you face a lot of knockbacks. If you have faced it, how have you kept going?
Oh, I totally identify. I mean, I don't think as a personality I'm very well suited to it, in the sense that when I was at RADA, I got in, but then I had a really difficult time. I had no confidence at all to start with. I hadn't got a clue how to act, really. I just had some instincts. I'd never done it. We had all these classes at RADA and like voice classes and movement classes. And then we were chucked into a rehearsal room. And the first play we did was like a French farce by Fado or something. And I had to play some little maid, making kind of rude, suggestive noises while dusting pictures with a feather duster. I mean, I had no clue how to play that. I didn't even know how to begin to step into the rehearsal room. And I was very, very inexperienced and very lacking in confidence. And there were moments of huge doubt throughout my first year. I nearly left on a couple of occasions. I was humiliated by teachers. Teachers could be extremely tough. They wouldn't be allowed to get away with it now because those things are much more. So, and I have had moments I think I was really lucky because this was, 40 years ago. And when I went to the RSC as a 20-year-old out of RADA, they did sort of train me up. I was doing a lot of, very uninteresting, walk-on roles, but there were also sonnet classes, there were voice classes, there were David Suchet was there teaching workshops, had John Barton, we had the great Cicely Berry, the amazing voice coach. They were just there holding workshops and classes. So it was a bit like you could continue to train. And I think that's not the case now. And it's much harder for people now. But I mean, I have had doubts, a lot of doubts. And I've also on the way, even while, working quite, lucky, having work and being reasonably successful and lucky. I've still had a lot of really dark moments where I've thought, what is this for? What's the point? You know, do I want to spend my whole life doing something? Is it valuable? Am I being useful to the society I'm part of? Those sort of doubts as well. And I think that partly self-doubt is an essential ingredient in what we do. But total lack of confidence is not helpful. So I think you have to be confident in yourself that you can do this thing. But doubting the value of it, or doubting, you know, those doubts I think are inevitable. And I would say to young actors listening, or students, the thing that I would always say, and I wish had been said to me, is you can only really do this if you can hang on to a sense of your own worth. Your value and your worth as a person is yours, and you know that worth. And the industry will often tell you that they have a different view of your worth. They don't want you. They reject you. You know, no, we don't want you for that job. And it's so easy for you to start thinking, taking on their assessment of your value as a person and as an actor. Try to hold on to your own sense of that value. But to do that, you do have to have reasonably tough skin. And the challenge is that to be an actor, you need not to have very tough skin. You know, being an actor is about using yourself and all your most personal, private parts of yourself, and using that. We are the raw material. We are the tools of our own trade. So it's such a fine balance between having a tough skin in the industry, in the profession, but being thin-skinned on stage or in front of a camera, you know, with each other. We have to kind of go in and out. We have to be vulnerable, but we have to be able to resist these really tough challenges that being an actor presents.
That's such wonderful advice. It's probably time we try and crack through some of the questions that have been pinging away in my inbox. We've got loads.
Okay,
but before we
great.
do that, I thought it'd be nice for you to meet a member of Playbox. So Rich, our technical wizard, is going to bring Esme Fleeman onto your screen to ask a question in person.
Okay.
Here she comes. Now, Esme is a member of Playbox's Acting for Screen course, where she regularly works on film scripts and gets on set in front of camera with a crew made up of other young people as well. Esme, are you there? Now, Esme, I can see that you've got your microphone turned off. So you might need to turn that. I can turn that on, I think.
I don't see Esme yet, but...
Do you not? Oh, let's have a look. Technology. Here we go.
I'm not Esme, she's just coming. We've had a slight issue with technology. I can hear some steps coming down.
Here she comes.
Hello.
Esme, hello. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Now, you have a question for Juliet, I believe.
Yes, I do. What is the most challenging thing for you when working on a film set?
Oh, great question. The most challenging thing on a film set, is definitely, I would say, staying focused. The big challenge, because you're on a film set maybe for 14 or 15 hours in the day, and out of that, all those hours, you'll only actually be acting for a few minutes, won't you? Is staying focused so that when eventually they do call action, you are absolutely poised and ready to play that scene or that part of the scene or that moment, and you're in character and you're focused on what your character wants and needs, and you're open to the other actors, and you're in the right sort of frame. Because all that hanging around that we do on film sets, you know, endless hanging around, even between takes of the same scene, and people are joking and joshing, and people are passing around tea or newspapers or doing the crossword or having a laugh or watching Instagram or whatever it is they're doing, and all the ways in which you can so easily get distracted. So I'd say I have this thing which I say to myself and to others sometimes, which is just stay in your bubble. You stay in a bubble, and the bubble is your character, her life, her reality for that scene they're about to play. Just stay in that bubble, and you can think about being her. You can think about what she done that morning, what she eat for breakfast, who's she spoken to that day, what's her mood at the moment. You can kind of keep adding to your sense of the character, but try not to get distracted back into being yourself and your friends and your phone and all that stuff. So I think for me, because I'm very distractible and very chatty, That's the biggest challenge.
Does that answer your question?
Esme, it's a great question. It's a really great question.
Great. You'll be able to take that back to your chums at Acting for Screen and tell them all about it next term.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that question, Esme.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, it's great.
Now, Juliet, before we put some more questions to you, we're going to launch a little poll now. So those of you participating in the webinar, you can vote for which of Juliet's theatrical mishap stories you'd like to hear at the end of Chatterbox. The options should appear on your screen now. You've not got long to vote, so get your answer in. And just a quick reminder for anyone watching at home or on YouTube that you can head over to playboxtheatre.com/donate if you want to help support the future of this incredible company who specialise in making work for and by young people. Now, let's do some questions. Let's see how many we can get through. There are loads here. So this is from Ruby. Ruby wants to know, what do you think is the best way to keep creative during this difficult time?
Yeah, really great question. Ooh, hang on. You're still there? I'm just going to move and I'm just going to plug my phone in because it's telling me my battery's run low, although it was. To keep creative during this time, that's a really good question. So it's hard. But there are two things I feel. One of which is that in a way, there's a way in which all this the stopping of our usual life. Hang on, I'm just going to turn. The fridge is making a really loud beep, so hang on a minute.
We'll just pause for a moment whilst Juliet talks.
Sorry, everybody, I'm back. Sorry, this is quite fun, isn't it? During this time, you see everybody in their own homes, and you learn quite a lot about what their house is like. I've got a noisy fridge. So creativity. I think when it started, when lockdown first started, once we'd all sort of calmed down, I thought, oh, okay, this is really exciting. When we'd all sort of got the measure of what we had to do and we realised that the whole world was sort of grinding to a halt, that all our normal things would stop, all our schedules, all our arrangements, all our routines were all stopping. After a few days, I got really excited and I thought, wow, this is what I've, in a way, always wanted, which is a time when I used to say, if I broke both my legs, I'd write a book, or if I couldn't act, I would do this. I'd write children's stories, I'd paint, I'd be a poet. And I thought, well, now, your bluff is being called. Now this is the time. And I could feel that gradually, as the days went by at the beginning of lockdown, that the stopping of all those routines, the less adrenaline, the less adrenaline in my life, the more my life just sort of went into this steady daily sort of routine, the more I could feel there was space opening up for creativity that hadn't been there for a long time. There was space in my head to think of a poem. I started writing poems for children to my little great nephews.
Oh, wow.
And normally I would love to do that, but I wouldn't have time. I might start one on the tube on the way to work, but I would never finish it. And gradually, with this sense of time, I don't know whether you've all found that, but time is changing. So it's becoming more sort of fluid and elastic. And now I've got time to go on thinking of a poem until I've got to the end of it and then written it down. So I think there's a way in which we can use this time, this slowing down in a way, this going into a weird floaty relationship to it. It's not all parceled up into different moments in the day, like get up, eat, exercise, go on the tube, get to work, or get to wherever you've got to get to. And it's up to us to structure our day. And I think that you can keep quite a lot of your day fluid, and into that space, creative ideas and thoughts will come, and also a more lateral way of thinking, a freer way of thinking, perhaps. That's the good thing. The less good thing, I think, is being alone. That we as actors, we're all used to being collective, aren't we? Our work is collaborative. We work as a group. We don't work in isolation. If I was, all those musicians and writers and poets are fine. They're just doing what they ordinarily do. But we need each other. So I miss that a lot. We can't do plays, as you said at the beginning. We can't come together. But I've set myself a little task. So every day, I've joined this thing called Poem a Day, and you can all sign up to it. If you go online and you find a website called poets.org, it's the Poetry Foundation in America, which is fantastic. You type in poets.org, it'll take you to a website, poetry website, and you can sign up to a poem a day. And first thing in the morning, into your inbox will come a poem. Huge variety, men, women, old ones, classical ones, brand new ones written last week, funny ones, sad ones, long ones, short ones. You don't know what you're getting, but every day I start the day by reading that. And then every day I try and learn a bit of poetry off by heart. So not necessarily the poem that's come in the inbox, but maybe one of my favourites, like, you know, W.B. Yeats, I love very much as a poet. Or so I try and learn a few lines of poetry just to keep my memory working. Because if I do go back to the show, we'll need, you know, my memory will need to be functioning to relearn the lines. But also just it's a kind of nice thing to do, to have that sort of somebody else's amazing words in your head during the day.
Well,
so
talking about memory, I'm going to jump in with another question. This is from Georgie Ibbison, who saw you in Mary Stuart last year.
Okay.
And she would like to know how you managed to retain both of those characters in your head without getting mixed up when there was a coin flip at the start of every show.
So the clue was we weren't sure how we were going to do that. And I have to say there were occasions when Leah Williams, who I did it with, Leah and I both occasionally would wander into the other role, think, oh, no, I'm not supposed to be saying that. That's the other queen. Whoop, big U-turn, back into the queen I'm playing tonight. The thing is, it was much easier than it looked, to be honest. It was, because Mary has the first act, Elizabeth has the second act, Mary has the third act with Elizabeth. Elizabeth has the fourth act, and Mary has the fifth act with a little coda at the end. So Mary has the whole of Act One. So what we did, both of us, is we would prepare to play Mary that night. So you go out on stage, the coin is tossed. If you get Mary, well, you're prepped to play her. If you get Elizabeth, you go off stage, and during the whole of Act One, you turn your head into Elizabeth. So it wasn't really as difficult as it seemed, and that was my... Anyway, I don't know what Leah did, but that was my method for coping with that.
That's good to know.
And, you know, when you're inside a character, then it's pretty easy. I mean, because in a way, they're inside-out people, you know. Elizabeth is Mary inside out. Mary is Elizabeth inside out. Mary, on the face of it, is extrovert, charming, sociable. Inside, she's extremely quite ruthless, quite ambitious, quite tough, quite manipulative. Elizabeth is those things on the outside, and inside, you know, she desperately needs to be loved. So you're playing, in a way, two halves of the same coin. So it's just a question of, you know, what's on the outside and what's on the inside.
How interesting. Ruby Riley would like to know, what's your most effective way of developing a character?
That's a really great one. It's not a quick answer, because I think it depends. Sometimes characters come to you quite quickly. Number one, I would say instinctively. I used to do loads of research. So I used to go through every script, and in one piece of paper I'd write down, or exercise book, I'd write down all the things that are said about that character by other people. So you assemble all the data about her or him. And then in a separate piece of paper or book, I'd write down all the things that the character says about themselves, how they describe themselves. I'm always late. I'm so sorry. I'm such an idiot. Oh, I don't find that right. You know, whatever they say, you'll find there's always clues about what people say about themselves. And then there's always clues in what other people say about them. Now, neither of those things will be an absolute truth any more than we know absolute truths about ourselves, or that there is absolute truth in what one person, a friend, will say about you as opposed to another friend. But if you collect all of it together, it's a bit like collecting all the ingredients for one dish. You're going to make a bolognese. You get all these different ingredients of things that people say about your character and she about herself, and then you kind of cook it on a back burner. And the flame is instinct, really. The flame is your... So I'd say I always start with a text, look for the text. And what do other characters need your character to be? It's always important to make choices that make sense to other characters too. So, you know, if you're playing Cleopatra and you have two serving women, Charmian and Iris, in the play, constantly running around beside you all through the play, every scene you're in, then you have to play a woman who does need to have two women servants with her all the time. And if you decide to play her as a completely self-sufficient person who doesn't need anybody or any support or help, that makes life very difficult for those two actresses playing your servants. So that's an example of what I mean about you have to make choices that also work for the play and other characters. But then I think instinct. So I look for people. I look on the tube. I love the tube. I love traveling on the tube in London because I'm always looking out for my character, whoever she is, or in the streets of London, or in the pubs or clubs or bars or walking down the street, and I sometimes follow people if I think they're really like my character. I'll follow them. I'll try and listen in. Last new character I had was I've just finished filming Sarah Pascoe's comedy series, playing Sarah's mum from Essex, and so I just took the train every Saturday. I would take the train out to Colchester and get off the train and spend the day walking around the town, sitting in cafes, listening to people chatting, going to the shopping malls, just following people around. Quite embarrassing sometimes. And recording them sneakily on my phone if they were really great. If that's exactly how I think my character's going to talk, then I'll sneakily try and get close with my voice recorder on my phone. And it did lead to a few slightly embarrassing situations where I looked like some creep, kind of trailing around, stalking somebody all the way through John Lewis. Some odd looks, but I'll do. I'm a bit ruthless like that. I don't really care what I do.
So that was for a screen job. Ellie Duffy would like to know whether you prefer stage or screen work.
We're so lucky in this country because it's all jumbled up. We can all do both. Whereas, like in the States, if you live in New York, you're really doing theatre. If you're living, or you live in LA and trying to do screen work, I think here, because we can go from one to the other, that's my favourite thing. If I had to choose one, if I lived in America, I'd choose New York. I'd choose the theatre. Because I think you cannot be being on stage with your fellow actors in a company, telling a story collectively and the whole story every night. You're going through the whole experience every night and you're sharing it with this amazing group of people, and every night is different, as we all know. And that weird and wonderful alchemy between a company of actors telling the story of a play and those people out there in the dark who every night will have a slightly different response. And that sort of unspoken conversation between us and them, it's just so magical. And all these years of work, and I've never really been able to work out what that is. But it's just so magical. So I think but I do love filming. I do enjoy filming a lot. I love that moment of real focus and concentration when somebody says action and you are focusing on that tiny little nugget, that little moment of a scene that and everybody, the crew, the cast, the company, are all focused on making that as perfect as possible and recording it, like polishing a tiny little gemstone that will later be put together with other stones to make a mosaic picture. But each little stone is polished, and that's like, filming one moment in a scene or half a scene or even a whole scene. But I like that focus, but I do get a bit desperate about the wasting of time and the hanging around, and there's ways in which you can use that time valuably, but I always find that a bit challenging.
I'm going to jump in with another one for you. B would like to know if there was anyone that you particularly admired or inspired you on your journey to becoming an actor.
Oh, loads. I probably became an actor because when I was 15, I was taken to see a Shakespeare play for the first time at Stratford-on-Avon. A mate of mine was having a birthday and her parents took a bunch of us to see a play. It was Richard II by Shakespeare, and it was performed by an amazing actor who you won't probably know because you're too young, but called Ian Richardson, he was in House of Cards as an old actor. He was a completely brilliant actor. I walked in, it was one of those things, I walked in a one person and I walked out feeling like I'm a different person, and it was that play, that night that I saw and his performance. And I went to see everything he did then. I was embarrassing, that summer I hitched up to Stratford and watched that play 6 times and, with Pad, I'd wait for him outside the stage door and follow him home. I was a real creep.
Developing.
And eventually I plucked up the courage and wrote to him, and I pretended to be I was a schoolgirl, but I pretended to be a drama student and said, can you give me some advice? So Ian Richardson but loads of that generation. David Suchet's always been, he was there in the company when I joined the RSC a few years later. He was in the company, was always inspiring to watch from the wings. I played small parts in shows he had a big part in, and I just watched from the wings every single night. Every single night he was brilliant. He gave it everything every night. Lots and lots of wonderful actors at that time in that company. That's when I met Alan Rickman. There was Jane Lapotaire, Zoe Wanamaker. Glenda Jackson was in the company. Loads and loads. On film, I've always really, really admired people who transform, like Meryl Streep. I mean, she's a great heroine of mine because she really, really transforms. So she's never, I tend to really most admire actors who can change. They really are different people, because I think that's sort of the job, not just play yourself or different versions of yourself. And lots of very famous actors do just play different versions of themselves, and they do it brilliantly. But for me, I suppose the joy is transformation, because that's where the imagination is kicking, and that's where you're making a journey towards being someone else. And that transformation is both the challenge and the sort of the liberation for me, anyway.
So this is Celia, what has been your most challenging role?
On stage, probably the Duchess of Malfi.
Oh.
It was, I played the Duchess of Malfi at Greenwich Theatre, and then we came into the West End. So that was quite grueling to do a Jacobean play in the West End 8 times a week for 3 or 4 months. Those plays are grim. I mean, they're amazing plays, but, the thing about the Duchess of Malfi is that so many terrible things happen to her, that you kind of run out of emotional, you think, okay, I've got nothing left to give, and then she has to sort of see her dead husband and her children all beheaded. I mean, the horror goes on, and you think, I can't. There's nothing else I can pull on now. I've peaked. I've cried my eyes out. I don't know where else to go. But the Jacobean playwriting tradition is one in which they really go on and on and on, pushing their actors towards having to find ever more emotional sort of resources, and it's exhausting. They're also fantastically challenging, but I think I also had just had my first baby when I played that, so I had a tiny 6-month-old baby, and so doing Duchess of Malfi 8 times a week with a small baby and kept awake all night was not great. So that was probably the toughest time.
I imagine. This is one from Annalise. When you were younger, did you ever have stage fright?
Oh, yeah, I really did. And I still do sometimes. And I've battled with that. Funnily enough, I didn't have it when I was younger. I didn't know the meaning of the word until I'd been working for about 15 years. And then it started to kick in. And I would have sort of periods where I'd have trouble with it and have to work really hard against it, and then I'd be fine, and then it would come back, and it got really, really bad about 7 years ago, to the point where I thought I was going to have to stop, and I was in a really bad shape because I couldn't bear the thought of stopping. I didn't know what else to do or who I would be if I wasn't acting, especially live theatre. So, yeah, it was agony, and it's torture. And anybody who's asking that question or who has had experience of it, I do think it's really important for us all to talk about. It's a weird thing. People don't own up to it. Famous actors, or lots of very well-known actors who have stage fright, and they don't talk about it. I suppose they're worried that maybe people won't employ them or they'll jinx themselves or something. But I think it's really important to talk about it because it is quite common. And there are ways in which you can help yourself. So the more we all discuss it, the better.
Now, look, we're running out of time. So should we try and just rattle through as many questions as we can really quickly?
Sorry, I just talk too much, don't I?
No,
Sorry.
No, it's great. It's so lovely hearing your responses. But let's just see how many we can get through. So, Amelia...
No, I just quickly want to, Callum, that question about stage fright, yeah. I would just like whoever asks the question, if they want to talk about that a bit more and hear more practical advice about dealing with it, then I'd be happy to do that once this, later. But because I realise if somebody's asking, then maybe it's because they really need some support, and I'm happy to talk further about that to anybody who has got that problem. That's
incredibly generous. I'll pass on your details to one another so you can carry on the conversation.
Okay.
So, Amelia, what is your favourite role?
Oh my goodness! Oh no, I can't do favourites. I mean, I can't even tell you my favourite colour. Is that pathetic? Well, I suppose I did love Truly Madly Deeply because I was working with my beloved friends who were Alan Rickman, who played my, my lover, boyfriend, or whatever. who was a great mate. And then the writer-director, Anthony Minghella, was also a very close friend. And it was just a joy to make, an amazing part. And I'm so happy that the film has gone on having a life. I did love that because it was great, very creative to work on, which films aren't always. In the theatre, I don't know. I tend to think the thing I'm doing at the moment is my favourite. And I think the play I am trying to do at the moment, The Doctor, is one of the greatest times I've ever had on stage, for sure. And I'm not just because it's the one I'm doing now, and you fall in love with your characters, don't you? But because it just is. It's an amazing role. She's an extraordinarily complicated person, and it's a very sort of grown-up play speaking to our world at the moment. And so I'm never happier than when I feel that we're doing something that's, useful, valuable. That's when I feel happiest. And I think this play is. Not all plays are, but this one is.
It really is a fantastic play. Everybody watching must go and see it when it comes back, and it will. I'm sure it'll come back.
Hopefully.
This is Laura. What's the hardest thing for you to overcome when you're acting?
Oh, that's a great question too. I think in the past it's been control. If I'm being really honest, I think I would say at the beginning, the hardest thing for me to overcome was lack of confidence. So I had to work really, really hard on that. I think that the answer to this question has changed over the years. I think self-judgment, being very hard on myself, self-punishing was the big thing I had to overcome. I'm not sure I've got over that one. I think now I have to overcome a desire to shape the whole event going on around me. I have to work really hard not to want to control the way a whole production develops. And it's not my job to do that. It's not my job to interfere with other actors. It's just my job to play the part I'm playing and to receive whatever comes and, in the moment. And I think I am better at that than I have been in the previous 40 years. That's the direction I'm trying to move in. I think that's the most important thing is just not to judge at all on stage. Don't judge yourself. Don't think, oh God, I did that really badly. Don't be in a judging position at all on stage of yourself or anybody else, nor an audience either. I get impatient when actors come off stage and say, what a revolting audience. Oh, they're so stupid tonight. They don't get it. Or they're just they won't laugh. They're so thick. Or, the way we all talk about audiences. And you think, no, let's not judge. It's not our job to. An audience is entitled to whatever response they want to make. And it's not our job to control or judge that response from them. And I'm sounding a bit sort of pious now, but I do think, I've had to work very hard. I'm a very naturally judgy person. So I've had to work very hard on this.
Now, lots of people are asking this, but this is from Karen. So she says, you've been wonderfully comic in a number of your roles. She especially loved your Mrs. Elton in Emma and Kieran.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
She says, do you have a preferred genre to work in, and do you approach comic roles in a different way to your more serious roles?
Another great question. I do absolutely love comedy, so you put your finger on it. I haven't been asked to do nearly as much as I would have liked. And every now and then when something like, Bend It Like Beckham has come along, I thought, hooray, now I've broken into comedy. And weirdly, no, you do get asked to do a few things exactly the same when something comes out. Think, oh, right, she can play, nutty, obsessive mums. So then you get asked to do a lot of similar things for the next year or two, and then people just forget and go back to asking, you to do sort of serious stuff. And I think I have always defaulted to serious stuff in people's heads, But I do love doing comedy. And so Emma was great fun. But interestingly, in relation to other questions, I had a lot of confidence struggles with that. I just never felt I got that character right, and it was really difficult to play an eccentric, weird, funny character in a period piece on a film set. That was really difficult because you don't rehearse, you don't have any discussion on a film set. You just have to, the camera rolls and you have to produce the performance. And she was hard to find without a rehearsal period. I mean, I used to have to sort of, in my hotel room, I would sort of wander around being Mrs. Elton the night before I had to shoot a scene. But I was always struggling on that one with confidence. But But yeah, but doing this comedy series just recently with Sarah Pascoe was a gift, and I still don't know why they cast me in it, and not somebody better known for comedy, but it was absolute joy to do. And the answer is no, I don't treat it any differently. I take a character I play in a comedy just as seriously as one I would play in a classic tragedy by Shakespeare. You still need to know just as well who your character is, what she's like, all her contradictions. You need to do all that work just as thoroughly. I don't see any difference really between those two genres in terms of how hard you have to prep.
Great. I think this might have to be our last question. Lots of people have asked similar things, but this is from Sean. What advice would you give to actors struggling to get off the ground after drama school and feeling a bit despondent?
Oh, I have lots of young friends who are in that situation who I try to mentor a bit. I do think it's really important that some of us who've been working for a while do mentor young actors, because it's so tough. I've got several young friends who left drama school last year or the year before, still not working. Some don't have an agent, or they have an agent, then that doesn't work out. I know, I really, really know how hard it is. I don't know from the inside, and I know I'm really lucky and privileged, but I completely sympathize. So I think some of what we've talked here today is relevant. I think hang on to your own sense of worth if you possibly can. Try and shield yourself. Do everything you can. Really work on that business of not going down, not letting your sense of value or worth as a person or an actor go down with the rejections that you get. When you don't get that audition, when auditions don't come up for a few weeks or months, try to remind yourself, whatever that takes, whether it's meditation or whether it's martial arts or talking to your mates or whatever it is, try to hold on and just say, that stuff is over there. The industry is over there and I am here. And there's a glass wall between me and it. It can be a bully, the industry. It can be a real bully, like in a playground, telling you that you're not worth anything and you're not wanted and they don't want you in their gang. It's not dissimilar. And what they say about bullying, isn't it, is they say put a glass wall between you and the bully so that you can see and hear everything, you can be in the world, but you're not letting the shit hit you, as it were. It's just dripping down the outside of that glass wall. It's easy to say and hard to do. More importantly, I would say try, if you can, to write or create your own work or improvise or get together. Try to make your own work happen and either get it on film or do a monologue. Write yourself a monologue or find a monologue that you really like in literature and adapt it, rewrite it. Put yourself on tape or work with friends or write your own one-woman or one-man show and try and get a few people to see that. I know we haven't time here, and I don't want to sound sort of glib or platitudinous. I know this is all really hard to do, but I think keeping a sense of your own work going is what's important before you lose sight of that. And then just remember, time will get you there. So many actors I know who are now really famous did not get into drama school for 4 or 5 times. I could name you actors who took 4 attempts to get even into drama school, let alone train. There were people who worked for years. Andrew Scott, was just a jobbing actor for 20 years before it's a really tough one, but I think it's the long game. It's the long game we have to play in this industry. And if you can stand it, you have to think that way. Just keep creative in whatever way you can and try not to let yourself get into a reactive state of mind. Try and be proactive and not reactive. I think that's important.
Now, you mentioned drama school there. You will be thrilled to hear that the poll results are in and they would like to hear your RADA audition story. Okay, well, I'll try and do it quickly.
Yeah. So at 18 years old, I was so unconvinced that I could have ever dreamed that I could be an actor, so that I wrote to RADA thinking, well, I'm just getting this out of the way. Obviously, I'm not going to get in, obviously. They said, can you do one, come along in the morning and do one Shakespeare piece and one modern piece? So I didn't really know what that meant even. I didn't know most plays. Anyway, I got a piece of Shakespeare and another piece. I turned up at RADA. I found it, went to London. I didn't live in London. I think my brother drove me. My parents didn't even know. My brother drove me. I walked in the door. I can't remember what I wore. I think they said wear black or something. And I was held in a room with about 25 other people. We all did our auditions one after the other. And then we were all back sitting in this room waiting to find out which of us were going to be shortlisted for the afternoon. So we all auditioned in the morning. And then this went on for weeks. They take 20, 25 people, audition them in the morning, shortlist a few of them, and the audition in the afternoon is for the head of the college, the principal. So you do it for a bunch of people in the morning and then for the principal in the afternoon. And then if you get through that, you have an interview with the principal, and then you're either in or you're not. So we all did our auditions in the morning, and we're all sitting in this room. And there's some people got a masseur, rubbing their back. And I'm thinking, oh God, yeah, of course, I suppose you have to have a masseur if you want to get into drama school. And then somebody else is wearing like a bright green satin trouser suit, and she seems to have a manager with her. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, of course. I don't even how could I even think of. Anyway, I was sort of just talking myself down, and then the phone rang. It was pre-mobile, so the phone rang, and I happened to be sitting by the phone. I picked up the phone, and they read out a list of names, and I thought it was the names of the people who they asked to stay for the afternoon. In other words, the people on the short list to audition a second time. My name wasn't on this list, so I read out this list, and I said, you're all staying. And the rest of us all got up, and I got my coat on, and I went downstairs, and I walked out the front door, and I thought, oh, well, that's that. I did try. Now I'll go to university. And suddenly this guy, this doorman from RADA, comes pelting down Gower Street after me. He says, where do you think you're going? Where do you think you're going? So I said, well, I've been told to go. He said, no, you haven't. You've been told to stay. So I had got this list of people completely wrong. So the people they were reading out were the people who they were letting go, not the people they were keeping. So how unpopular was I when I walked back into RADA? John, the doorman at RADA, sadly died a long time ago now, but I owe my career to John, the doorman, because if he hadn't bothered to come running down Gower Street, I would have walked off and gone to Bristol University, and that'd be the end of the story.
We're having this conversation now, thanks to John, the doorman. Now that is all we've got time for. Jules, I know you did a lockdown list of things we should watch and do and listen to in isolation. Maybe you could text that to me, and we'll put that up on our page. That would be great.
All right.
I'm so sorry we haven't got through more questions, but join me next Friday at 4 p.m. when I'll be chatting to the RSC's most recent Hamlet, star of Press and Sky's Gang of London. It's Papa Essiedu. Now, Jules, in the spirit of keeping the creative conversation going week to week, I think you've got a question you'd like me to put to Papa?
Yes, I thought about this. I thought I won't ask Papa, who I know a little bit. I say, hello, Papa, lots of love to you. But I'm not going to ask him an actor question. The question I'm going to ask him is, what is he learning about himself during lockdown? Is he finding things out about himself during lockdown? Because I think we all are, and it's quite interesting. And if so, is he prepared to tell us what he's learning about himself as a person during this very, very strange and surreal time?
That's great. Well, everybody tune in next week to see how Papa answers that. Juliet, thank you so much for joining me on our first ever Chatterbox session. It's been such a pleasure.
It's a real pleasure. Thanks for listening, everybody. And best of luck. I just want to say best of luck with your working lives and futures.
Thank you so much. And just a final reminder to everybody, that the reason we're here is to support the work Playbox does with young people. And they really do need your support. Yes, your support out there. If you've got any spare change in your digital pocket, please head over to playboxtheatre.com/donate and pop it in our digital bucket. Donations with lots of zeros at the end are also very welcome. And that's it for this week. So we will see you next Friday at 4 p.m. with Papa Essiedu. Thank you again to Juliet Stevenson. And for now, stay safe, stay creative, and see you all soon. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye-bye.